Alright y'all, today I'm going to be showing y'all how to replace this valve cover, and here's how you kind of detect one. I was rooting around today, it looks pretty dry, but you can kind of see on this angle there's a bit of seepage coming out. You see that? It's way easier to see in person. And also down here in this corner, so it's gonna start leaking way more than that in the future. Things you're gonna need for this job: obviously your gasket set, and you're gonna have to get those grommets too. They don't usually come with them, but you need to get them, or else if they're too worn like the old ones are, when you put it back, you're gonna crack your valve cover probably. Yeah, at this age. And these are only about $8 for the whole set, so go ahead and do it. And then you're gonna need about like a little tube of RTV, your socket sets, and you're gonna have to use a torque wrench on this. So make sure you have all this together. And I was able to find those gaskets locally if you're in a hurry, so just keep that noted. Alright, the next step, undo these 3 little tabs on the cabin air filter. Pull it right on out. Place it aside. Take the filter out. Put it in a place it won't get dirty. And then you see those bolts there? I'll get you the Torx bolts for those in a second, the size, but you'll need Torx sets. And then you take that out, and you also take off this front part of this plastic cover, and then you just pop out these wires, and this thing pulls right out. It'll give us clearance to the back of that valve cover. In the socket for those bolts, there's a T30. Don't use smaller, or else you'll just strip those bolts, and you don't want to do that. All right, so those are loose there. So the next step is unclip this carefully. You don't want to crack it. This brittle plastic. You want it to set back normally. This unpops from the bottom. Just wedge it out carefully, and then these lines just pop right out, and then this thing's free to remove, and those bolts stay in, so that's nice. And now we have access to our valve cover. Next step in the process is to take your flat-headed screwdriver or pocket screwdriver, pop these 4 little covers out. You see I'm missing one. The tabs break easy, and we'll get those 2 covers off. And you will have to take the oil cap off to take that one off. Always make sure you got good lighting. That's a huge tip. Take your 10mm socket, undo these 2 bolts, and then there's the little nuts here, so don't lose those. Good thing to have is like a magnetic little tray to put those kinds of things on so you don't lose them. And if you don't have that, I always like to use those shock mounts there. Sometimes that's a really nice way to not lose things. So I'll see you when I got these covers off. All right, so each one's removed. I have them in the little tray, so I don't lose them. And this one pops up and out. Has those little things that go underneath that. Place this to the side. Keep your workspace organized. And you can kind of see the insides here of my little CCV delete, and just how I have that set up with that little clamp and a little cork. And next, I'll take this off. Place this to the side, I won't get dirty. Ooh, it's just a little hot. Might have to let it cool down a bit. Trying to do this carefully with one-handed. This loops up and over. Place it to this side. These covers are gonna get hot. All right, now you see this down here, your coil packs. So you want to take each one of these out and place them. A lot of people like to place them in the order they were removed. So, and it's not a big deal, but it keeps things the way they were. And if you have like a Sharpie or something, or like a silver Sharpie or something, you can mark them too. And then when you're done with that, you just take these wires out that are connected to the valve cover. And I think that might be a 10mm, but you might want to check. And I'll see y'all in a sec. Now, I'm not doing them myself right now, but now would be a good time to, if you need to replace coil packs or all of them, or spark plugs. And also, while you can kind of check if there's oil in the spark plug wells, it looks like, luckily for me, all of them are in good shape. That's pretty common to happen. You'll get all kinds of misfire codes. And so I'll remove these wires and unclip that little harness for the ignition, and see y'all in a sec. Okay, so this little unit, if you can see it, this kind of just pops out. Be careful, don't break the plastic. I broke the plastic little thing down here. Whatever, it happens. These are 8mm nuts for correction. So you take those, these are easy to lose. You don't want to lose them down in the spark plug wells. Make sure to put them in your tray, and we'll put this out of the way and get ready to remove the valve cover. Right now, with the little harness, which is one of these wires that runs to this side, is removed, you can see how it is held in. I broke that tab off down there, but you can see how on each interval side there's a little tab holding it in. So you just press it straight down, so you can probably go pop, 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 removing it. And so you can check back there. It's real dirty. If you have an air compressor, now is a good time to spray all this off with some air to remove some loose particles and stuff. Alrighty, so the next step in this whole process is, so you take those little clips off that hold the O2 sensor wires to the valve cover. Now don't remove the wires themselves out of the little clips, because they are not fun to get back in. But they pop off and pop back on this little, like a little square area. Like there's a little square that it pops into on the side of the valve cover. And do that back there and back there. And you can see how those wires go around and go here. And so the next step in this process is to remove the bolts and pop this thing off. So for these bolts, you just take your little 10mm. Let's see, put that right on there. And it, sorry, I don't have much leverage with one hand, but a little awkward filming. But yeah, you just get it loosened, do that to all of them, then take them all out. So then you get all the ones around the sides, and then you got 4 of these here with a little thread sticking out the top. So you'll take your deep well 10mm and do that. Oh yeah, you can kind of see some oil going on there. So I'm gonna put that in the tray. So those 4, there's 15 in total. And the ones back there can be a little bit tricky, so just have patience. It's very doable. As you can see, these 2 are different lengths. The stud that goes into the head actually screwed out of it there. So I'm gonna have to put it back in. Hopefully it's not, you know, cross-threaded or anything. But normally, let me grab my light so I can show y'all better. See how there's just a hole there? I don't like that. But then there's just a normal stud there. All right, so I removed all 15 of the bolts. It takes a little bit of patience, but you'll get there. And next is just taking it off. All right, so I wiggled off the valve cover, put it on a little box, prevent oil from getting on the floor. And I peeled off the old gasket. And you can see where it had been leaking there. So that's good. And that color, I'm really happy with this. This is one clean engine. I had no idea what the service history on this thing was. And just in my 30-something thousand miles of ownership, I've been doing about like 8,000 or 9,000 mile oil changes with either Rotella T6 or Mobil 1 Euro Formula 040. And just one clean top end right there. And next step, see that RTV, you know, somebody's done this valve cover gasket before. You want to take like a little scraper and scrape it away from the engine. You don't want to get it in there. Get all that old stuff off. Don't use a Brillo pad, because some of that stuff can get in the engine, cause wear. They actually had a TSB about that, interestingly enough. And then just take, you know, your little blue shop towels and brake cleaner and just go around the edges and make sure everything's clean. And we'll move on to the next step. All right, so all the edges are cleaned up. RTV's removed from those 2 locations. And so those edges are all clean. And don't forget to do the ones around the spark plug wells. Get those clean and ready, so we're not having, you want to have the best seal possible. Next, we want to clean that up just a little bit. Then we'll put it back on. Also, just for reference, I did use like a little razor blade on those areas, just very carefully. You don't want to nick the metal, which is easier than you think it is. And then I went around the edges on those, just get it clean as I reasonably can. And next, I'll show you where and how to apply the RTV. All right, so you want to put some RTV, just a little bit, on those corners where the Vanos unit connects to the head. And also just little dabs on the edges of the half moons at the front and back. Just did it really the same way I did it here. And we'll get her sealed back up. Yeah, and all the gaskets fit so snugly on there. And now we'll throw it onto here. And the key is you don't want any of it to fall off. And you want to make sure there's clearance back there and none of the wires are tucked under. All right, so it's on, and just check all the holes and spark plug wells and just check the wires back there. Make sure everything's seated right and none of the gaskets fell out into there. And now we just replace the little gaskets on the nuts. And we'll get it torqued to, it was 10 Newton meters. If you need any proof that it's good to spend the $8 on the $8 15 grommet set for this. This is an old one, and I'm sure this isn't even the worst, but it's just stuck on, just melted. This one's even a little bit pliable, but some of them are just hard as plastic. So definitely, if you're going to be going through the trouble of doing this, get the grommets for sure. Next step in the process, which I've already done, go ahead and take all those bolts and put them in by hand. Just twist them in, make sure they're in there. You want to start them by hand to make sure you don't cross thread. And then we're going to tighten it to 7.5 foot-pounds. And yeah, that's what we'll do. And we'll do it we'll do the center 4 first, and then from there we'll go in a crisscross pattern to get the best, most even tightening down. All right, well, I torqued everything back up. Hopefully you can get a good picture there. But I did like the cross pattern. Some places were definitely tricky, especially by that AC line in the back left. So it certainly helps when you're torquing these things to have a variety of 10 mil sockets of different lengths and different lengths of extensions, because sometimes there's just some really awkward angles and trying to get it, completely on it without stripping it. And I hope this helped. And this is pretty, especially on a lowered car like this, it really hurts your back doing that. So if you have a sensitive back, I wouldn't recommend this doing yourself. And so time to button everything back up. Just going to plug that CCV line in, and then I'm going to start it and make sure everything is up to snuff. Here's the moment of truth. I started it up. No oil smoke or vacuum leaks is what would happen if you did this wrong. So yeah, and don't forget, I almost forgot to put the ignition coils back in before I test fired. So you just put it back all together, and boom, got a new valve cover gasket. Hope this helped y'all out. Please like and subscribe if it did. Thank you.